Once upon a time, there lived 3 little pigs in a cozy farmhouse with their mother. One day, Mama Pig called her children together and said, "Okay, little pigs, you are all grown up. It's time for you to go out into the world and build houses of your own. But beware of the big bad wolf. Build your houses safe and strong, for if he catches you, he'll gobble you up." So the 3 little pigs set out on their journey, and they first came to a field of straw. The first little pig saw the bales of straw and said, "Why, I'll stack this straw into a house nice and quick." And so he said goodbye to his brother and his sister, and in no time at all, he had built a house of straw, and he went inside to relax. The next 2 pigs, they continued on their journey until they came to a forest. Looking around at all of the sticks of the forest, the second little pig said, "Why, I'll use these sticks to build a house that's much stronger than straw. And plus, it'll take me no time at all." So the second little pig set to work on her house of sticks. It took her a little longer, but in no time she was finished and went into her house to relax. Now, the third little pig was growing very tired, but he continued on the journey until he came to a small town. And he looked around and he saw that there were lots of houses built of bricks. And he thought to himself, "Why, I'll build a house of bricks that's sturdy and strong." And so he set to work, and he worked long and hard on this house. But at last, he finally finished and had a strong house of bricks, and he went inside to relax. Now, just a few days later, the 3 little pigs heard that the big bad wolf was seen nearby. And remembering their mother's warning, the 3 little pigs, they went inside their house and hid from the wolf, hoping to be safe. Now, the big bad wolf was out hunting for his dinner and sniffing around until he caught the scent of the first little pig who was hiding inside his house of straw. That hungry wolf, he walked right up to the door and he knocked on the door and he said, little pig, let me come in." Huddled nervously inside, the first little pig cried out, "Not by the hairs on my chinny chin." The big bad wolf showed his long, sharp teeth, and he said, "Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in." So he took a deep breath and blew as hard as he could, and the house of straw flew to pieces with bits of straw flying everywhere, leaving that first little pig with no protection from the wolf. And so he squealed and he ran as fast as he could through the forest to his sister's house of sticks, and together they hid from the wolf. Well, that wolf was growing very hungry, and so he chased after that little pig through the forest until he got to the house of sticks. He growled and he knocked on the door and he said, little pigs, let me come in." And the 2 little pigs, they hugged each other and they cried out, "Not by the hairs on our chinny chins." Oh, that big bad wolf was very hungry. He licked his lips and rubbed his belly and he growled, "Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in." So he took a deep breath and blew as hard as he could. And that house of sticks, it shook, but it didn't break. And so the big bad wolf took another big deep breath and blew as hard as he could, and that house of sticks flew to pieces, leaving the 2 little pigs with nothing to protect them from the wolf. And so they squealed and they ran as fast as they could through the forest and into town to hide in their brother's house of bricks. Oh, but the big bad wolf, he chased those little pigs through the forest and into town. And he got to that door and he rapped on it and he growled, little pigs, let me come in." And the three little pigs huddled inside. They cried out, "Not by the hairs on our chinny chins." And the big bad wolf, he growled, "Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in." So he took a big deep breath and blew as hard as he could. But that house of bricks, it stood strong. Oh, the big bad wolf, he took a bigger, deeper breath and blew as hard as he could, but the house of bricks, it didn't budge. The third little pig, he laughed with pride and he said, "Listen here, wolf, my house of bricks is much too strong to be blown down. And now it's your turn to run. There are no bullies allowed in this town." And so the three little pigs, they burst out of their house, and all the other animals in the village did as well. And so together, the three little pigs and all their friends, they chased that big bad wolf right out of town. And he never bothered the three little pigs ever again. The end.
Once upon a time, there lived a fisherman. He lived in a tiny shack by the ocean and worked hard every day to catch enough fish to feed his many children.
One day, as the fisherman cast his line into the water, he felt a tug.
And he reeled in his catch.
When all of a sudden, caught on his hook, the fisherman discovered a golden fish, unlike any fish he had ever seen before.
However, the fisherman's surprise grew when the golden fish opened its mouth and began to speak.
"Please," said the golden fish, "release me from your hook. Set me free in the water, and I will grant you whatever you wish."
The fisherman had not caught many fish that day, but still he took pity on the golden fish and decided to let him free.
As soon as the golden fish was safe in the water, it turned to the fisherman and said, "Thank you, sir, for setting me free. Now, what is it that you wish? And I will make it be."
The fisherman thought of his family, crowded into their old rundown shack, and he knew what to wish for. "Golden fish, I wish for a nice big house for my family."
"And so it will be," said the golden fish. "I hope you enjoy your wish. And if you ever need me, call out to the waves and I will come."
The fisherman hurried home to tell his family about the golden fish. When he arrived, he couldn't believe his eyes. Where once stood his tiny shack, there was now a big, beautiful house with plenty of room for his many children.
The fisherman told his family all about his wish for a new house, which the golden fish had clearly granted.
For a while, the fisherman's family lived happily in their home. But before long, the fisherman's sons and daughters began to complain.
"Dad, why didn't you ask for a bigger house? We want a mansion with fine clothes and fancy things."
So the fisherman hurried back to the ocean and called out to the golden fish.
With a splash, the golden fish peeked its head out of the water. "I see you've returned," said the fish. "What is it that you need?"
"Well," said the fisherman, "thank you for the house, but what we really need is an enormous mansion filled with fancy clothes and fine things."
"And so it will be," said the golden fish. "I hope that this time you truly enjoy your wish. But if you ever need my help, call out to the waves and I will come."
The fisherman ran back to his family and found an enormous mansion filled with the fanciest clothes and the finest things that he and his family could have ever imagined.
The fisherman and his family lived in their mansion, and for a while, they were happy. However, not very long after, the fisherman's sons and daughters began to complain again.
"Dad, why didn't you ask the golden fish for a palace? We want a golden palace and a kingdom to rule too."
And so the fisherman returned to the ocean
and called out to the golden fish.
And with a splash, the golden fish emerged from the water. "I see you've returned again," said the golden fish. "What could you possibly need now?"
"Well," said the fisherman, "I wanted to thank you for the mansion. But what we really need is a castle and a great big kingdom to rule."
"Ah," said the golden fish, "I think I know exactly what your family needs. Go, fisherman, and do not call me again."
So the fisherman hurried back home. But when he arrived, there was no castle. There was no mansion, not even a house. All that remained was a tiny shack.
And so the fisherman ran back to the ocean and pleaded and begged for the golden fish to return.
But the golden fish never appeared again.
And so the fisherman and his family, they returned to their tiny shack by the ocean. And they had no fancy clothes and no fine things.
But they had each other. And that was what the golden fish said. That, indeed, was exactly what they needed. The end.
Once upon a time, there lived a king and a queen. They were wonderful rulers, fair, patient, kind, and wise. When they had a daughter, the whole kingdom rejoiced in celebration of the baby's birth. But as the princess grew into a child, it became clear that the king and queen had a problem. Their daughter would not go to sleep. Every night, when the king and queen attempted to put their daughter to bed, the princess would talk, sing, yell, and cry. She would climb out of her bed, run around her bed, or even hide under her bed. And when the princess finally fell asleep, her parents would tiptoe to their room. But as soon as they got comfortable in their own bed, they would awake to cries of, "Mama! Papa!" Returning to their daughter's room, they found the princess wide awake. No matter what they tried, no member of the royal family could get a good night's sleep. Now, as time went on, it became clear that the sleepless princess would be a big problem. You see, the king and queen were so tired that they were falling asleep in important meetings, and they no longer had the patience to help the townspeople with their problem. So, the king and queen announced that they would award a chest of gold to anyone who could help their daughter get a good night's sleep. The news spread, and people came from near and far to help the princess get to bed. There were famous storytellers who came to tell the princess epic bedtime stories. The princess listened to every word, but she never fell asleep. Next, there were talented musicians who came to sing to the princess. They sang until the strings on their instruments snapped. Lastly, experts came with gifts of blankets and curtains and clocks, even medicine. But nothing could help the princess get to bed. It was a dark and stormy night, and the king and queen were at their wits' end when they heard a knock at the castle door. There stood a poor woman from the village. Though she worked day and night, she barely had enough money to feed her 10 children. She was wet and dirty and carrying her youngest daughter, who was no older than the princess. The queen invited them in and offered them dry clothes and food. It was then that the woman explained she was there to help the princess fall asleep, as a chest of gold would feed her family for the rest of their lives. Now, the king and queen couldn't imagine that this poor woman could help their daughter get to bed, as so many people before her had failed. Yet, they led her upstairs to where they found the princess, exhausted but stubbornly bouncing on her bed. The princess climbed down from her bed and approached the young girl. Meanwhile, the woman stopped to take a look at the princess's bed, which was piled high with mattresses and blankets. With a flick of her wrist, the woman began to remove each mattress one by one, and when she got to the bottom, she stopped. The king and queen watched intently. Even the two girls turned to see what was happening. The woman bent down to pick up a small green ball. "A pea," she said. No wonder the poor thing couldn't sleep. The woman threw the pea in the trash. There, she said. She'll sleep now, mark my words. The woman ushered the princess back to her bed. The young girl smiled at the princess. Here, she said, handing her her tattered old teddy bear. The princess took the bear and climbed into bed. It wasn't long before her eyes slipped closed and she was fast asleep. The princess slept all night that night and many nights afterwards. The king and queen were amazed. And as promised, they gifted the woman with a chest of gold. But they also awarded her with a home in the royal palace, where the two young girls became best friends. And everyone lived happily and well rested ever after. That is, until the two friends discovered slumber parties. The end.
Mother Goose Club Playhouse.